Hello viewers! In this video I am going to introduce a piece of software which is absolutely super cool. You could also regard it as a Swiss Army knife for developing software, which is called Directus. Here we have the website of Directus, and they claim the backend to build anything or everything, which is, I don't know, you have to dive in yourself. But this is a bold claim. However, it is actually a low-code or even no-code application system. And beyond that, it actually also gives you a lot of automatically created APIs. And if you scroll through that, there is basically everything mentioned which it does. It has a REST interface, GraphQL APIs, and so on and so on. You can create your own dashboards, you can create flows, whatever strikes your fancy. Also, it ties in with the most popular JavaScript frameworks, and there is basically almost nothing you can't do with it. Before I really dive into the topic, a short word about memberships for this channel. If you would like to support this channel, you can choose between 3 membership levels on Patreon. And basically all of my Patreon members can watch my videos completely free of ads. And I'm also answering all your questions and comments on Patreon with priority. There are 2 more and higher membership levels on Patreon, Plus and Plus Plus. They give you 10, respectively 25% discount on my consulting rates. And if you would like to book a session with me, there's the booking link in the video description. Of course, there's also the completely free of charge YouTube subscription to this channel. And if you haven't done so yet, please take your time now and click on subscribe below this video, and also ring the bell so that you are informed each time I'm releasing a new video. And if you like this video while you're watching it, it would be really awesome if you could give me a like, because that doesn't only help this video, but the entire channel to position itself better in the YouTube algorithm. That would be really awesome. But now let's dive in and have a look what Directus is, what it can do, and then later on how to install it in Container Manager on our Synology, using Portainer, make VLANs, and all these nice little things which I've already introduced to you. And finally, we are going to dive a little bit into Directus and create a few tables, play around with it, and see what we can do within a few minutes. Well, what is Directus? I've already shown you on their webpage their little bit of a marketing blurb. However, it is already pretty mature. It is currently in version 10.6 of some point release. So you can imagine it has already proven itself in quite a few applications. And if you would like to actually have a look, there is also a section about success stories here, and you can just browse through that. There are really quite a few interesting ones. Beyond that, you can also have a look at what it actually can do and what it can't do. But let's cut a long story short. Basically, Directus is an overlay over basically any database which you want. They support MySQL, MariaDB, Oracle, I think even MS SQL, but particularly also Postgres. And this is what we're going to be using later on. You can create your data model inside Directus. You can basically also fine-tune what the end user is going to see, from authorizations, authentication, over to basically the layout of a little screen where you can already create a low-code or even no-code app. Straight out of Directus without even using any of the frameworks, which is super cool. We're going to have a look at this later on. As you can see, there is quite some extensive information about what it can do. Just have a look yourself. As I said, there are also things like solutions, which you can also tap into. Mostly, but Directus is mostly known as a headless CMS. Yes, you can also use it for that, but really it goes way beyond a headless CMS. You can do quite a lot of things with it, which have nothing to do with the CMS at all. There's also quite some extensive documentation about Directus available, and really, I've seen a lot of documentation. This is really good. So have a dive into it yourself and read up on it. It's really written in a very concise language, which is easy to understand. Of course, if you don't want to host it yourself, you can also subscribe to their cloud offering, which isn't cheap, but since they are targeting bigger companies as well, it's understandable that they also charge some money for it. In the next section of this video, I'm going to show you what you can do, what you have to do to self-host Directus in the community version on your Synology with everything which goes with it on Postgres. Well, there is a little bit of information available about how to self-host Directus. I'm gonna quickly try to find this. Yes, I'm on the right track. And down here in the Directus docs, you have a section which is called self-hosted, and there is a Docker guide. And while it's well written, it basically just gives you a few hints and examples what you can do to start with Docker Compose. However, as usual, I'm going to go a little bit beyond what they do, and using MacVLANs and Portainer with stacks, we're going to make it our own. For that purpose, I have, as usual, done the work for you, and I have prepared the stack script already, which you can see here in my text editor. By the way, I'm using VS Codium. If you would like to also use that, the link is downstairs in the video description. VS Codium, I'm using that because it's basically the complete open source derivative of Microsoft's VS Code, but it doesn't phone home or download anything from Microsoft, so you have your complete privacy here. Anyways, let's have a look at this Directus script. You can also download it from the link in the video description, and I suggest you do that now and open it in your text editor or file editor of choice. And together with me, we're gonna now look at the changes which you have to do to make it work in your own environment. So first of all, let me just take this distracting thing away here. The thing starts with the database section, and they suggest to use PostGIS. They are supporting basically all long-term releases of any database, so 15 should be okay. Then, of course, we want to persist our database data because everything in Directus is stored in the database. So this is the first point where we have to go in. As usual, the volume mappings work as follows. The right-hand side is what happens inside the container, nothing to be edited, leave it as it is. And the left-hand side before the colon is what we can change and where we have to basically provide our own volume. And to do that, it's very easy. You open your browser, you go onto your Synology, quickly log on again. Now here in DSM, you open your file station. Go to the Docker shared folder, which has been automatically created when you installed the Container Manager image on your Synology. And by the way, if you don't know what the Docker and Container Manager stuff is and so on, I've made a video for exactly you guys, which is available here. In this video, which is basically everything for newbies, I'm explaining how to prepare your Synology for Container Manager, what Container Manager is compared to Docker, how to prepare everything like the text editor and SSH access and so on and so on. Have a look at this, come back to here, and everything will be clear. Clear as mud. All right, we are now in this shared folder. Click on Create and create the main folder for your Directus installation. Let's call it Directus Demo, just like in our configuration file. Directus, there's a U missing. Okay, so open this new folder by double-clicking on it, because we now have to put in a few more subfolders in here. Which ones are these? Just let's go back to the editor. First of all, data for the database data. As I said, clear as mud. Create folder, data. Now, of course, we need the exact path to this folder. How do we do this in a graphical user interface? That's very easy. You right-click on this line of this newly created folder. You click on Properties, and next to Location, you have the complete path. Mark it like I do with a mouse. Type Command-C or Control-C if you're on Windows on your keyboard. Switch back to your editor. Mark everything from here like I do up to the colon, and press Command-V or Control-V on Windows, and you've basically replaced the string with what you have. Next in the database section is the environment. We have 3 variables. The user can stay on Directus. You might want to change the password to something a little bit more not as easy to guess. That's of course Directus, and the Postgres DB name, this is the name of the database inside Postgres, is Directus. So the first two, the first and the last one, you can leave as you like, if you like, and the password you might want to change. But please remember it. Oh well, you will be able to find this in your file anyways. Okay, lastly, in this section, we have to take care of the network section. And this is something I mentioned earlier already. As usual, I'm going to make use of MacVLANs. And if you don't know yet what MacVLANs are, how to configure them, and all the intricacies which come with them, I have made a video about it here, which I suggest you have a look at if you are completely new to MacVLANs. It is almost 30 minutes of lots of information, but afterwards you will be maybe not an expert, but you will know most of the things which are necessary to follow my videos, and most of the things which are not immediately obvious right now will be explained there. Please, if you don't know MacVLANs at all, jump into this video and come back, otherwise you will miss information which is really important right now, and configuration as well, and nothing will work for you. Now back to the network section here. Here at the point IPv4 address, you have to enter an available IPv4 address from the MacVLAN which you created. If you don't know what's available at this point in time, just go over to your Portainer. Freshly logged in should look like something like this. Click on Containers, and if you look here over on this side at IP address, you can sort it, the list by IP address ascending or descending. So pick one of the available IP addresses and enter it in at this point here. Next we have the section Cache, which is Redis. In my opinion, it's not really necessary to persist Redis data, but if you would like to do that, you can do it by unhashing these two lines, volumes and this line here, but then also please create the appropriate subfolder in the Directus folder on your Synology. Otherwise, this will not work. Next, of course, like just before with the database, we have to supply an available IP address here from our MacVLAN. Now comes the interesting part with the Directus section itself. I usually leave it like this with Directus:\latest, because then when I update it or have it pull the image again, I always get the latest version of Directus. One quick word about Postgres. I usually leave the version specified, because sometimes the update will then, if you put in the latest, a newer Postgres version, and this is not, of course, not compatible with what you have there, and then the whole thing will not start and big problems. Blah, blah, blah. All right, let's go back to the Directus section here. Next we get to the ports. If we are using, and since we are using MacVLANs, we don't need a port mapping. If you don't use MacVLAN, of course, you have to enter a port mapping, obviously. Next, we get to the volumes section, and here we have two subfolders which we still have to create. One is called uploads, the other one is called extensions. Let's do that quickly over in DSM. Create extensions. Create folder uploads. There we go. And like before, let's get the folder names by right-clicking on this, going to properties, and copying out this string next to locations or location. Then go back to your editor and paste this, what you just have in your clipboard, over this string here. I've done that already, so I don't have to do anything. But yeah, don't forget to do that. Of course, depends on cache and database clearly. Now we have several environment variables, which you have to maybe adjust. Definitely the key and the secret. So I'm quickly going to show you how you can replace these yourself. In this video, I showed you how to install IT tools. Let's go over to my homepage app. By the way, video is also here. And I'm going to open my IT tools here. Let's now go over to UUIDs and create two. If you don't like what you see, you can click on refresh as many times as you like until you see something which you like. I'm going to use these two, copy these into my clipboard, go back to my editor and use this one as the key. Copy paste as usual. And let's take the second one as the secret. Copy paste as before. Done. Next we have several parameters or environment variables concerning the database connection. Just leave it, the first three, as it is given here in the script. However, if you changed anything before in the database section, like user, password, and DB, you will have to adjust it accordingly here in these three variables, which I'm just showing as marked. Then, of course, the Redis and cache section, you can leave that exactly as it is given here. Now you have the admin email. Please adjust to something which you have, including the email address as well as the password. Now, if you want to send emails from Directus, you can either do that with the classical SMTP parameters. Nothing too strange here. You can really fill in these parameters if you like, and please remove the hashes. Otherwise it will not work. If you use Amazon SES like I did, then you can use these three variables, which I'm leaving in here for you to play around with. By the way, if you think these are correct, or this is an actual SES account, it isn't. So please replace these things with your own SES account data. Now there is a section called labels, and this is used for a thing called Watchtower. And Watchtower, if you don't know it yet, is a tool which can be used to automatically either inform you about updates to containers or actually even perform the updates itself. If you would like to use Watchtower with label enable, you can put in this label and it will then automatically update Directus if you like. If you don't like that, just put hashtags in front of both lines and or delete them, whatever. Then Watchtower is out of the scope. Then, of course, the network section here supply an available IP address for your Directus service. And here, of course, in the last part here under networks, supply the correct name of your McVLAN. It might not be called MVL200. Well, after everything is done and dusted here, you can type Command A or Control A on your keyboard, which will select everything, then Command C or Control C to put everything into the clipboard. And now we go over to Portainer. Earlier we looked at our container list. Now we go over to stacks and create a new stack. Click on Add Stack. Give your Directus container or Directus stack a proper name, like Directus. I'm going to call it Directus-demo because I already have a productive installation running here. And now, since we have everything in our clipboard, we can go into the web editor and press Command or Control V and paste everything in here. If you want, you can once more go through everything and check if everything is correct. Now, nothing else has to be done except for clicking on Deploy the Stack. And if you are doing this for the first time, it will take a while until everything has been downloaded from the internet and published and or submitted to the container manager to create the actual containers. So don't worry if this takes a few minutes, it will come back. Once everything has been downloaded and the container is deployed, you will find your Directus stack listed like this. Click on it and you should see 3 subcontainers in the state of running. I usually like to have a look into the log files just as a precaution. See, something could not be opened, and we will have to find out what the problem might be. But for now, we have to take care of this little problem here. The upload directory is not read-writable. And this applies to basically all the subfolders which we just created. This is a little bit a niggle on Synology because they have a way of supplying permissions on their shared folders, which is not always compatible with all containers. So what we have to do is we have to open a command line like this, and now we have to log on to our Synology. And now I'm switching over to my shared folder Docker and Directus. So let's have a look at the permissions which we have here. And as you can see, basically it is read-writable for everyone. However, there is a little plus at the end. And this indicates that there are special permissions for Synology on there, which will prevent the whole mechanism from working. So the only subfolder where everything worked is data, because of course it seems that the PostgreSQL container can deal with exactly these things. So let's correct this for the remaining 2 folders, which will be a command which is called change mod -r recursive 777 on extensions, and the same for uploads. And if we look at the permissions now again, the little plus sign has vanished and we should be able to properly write into these folders. I now 777 is an ugly solution, but I haven't been able to come up with anything better up to now. Should you have a better solution than this, please be so kind and leave me a comment under the video. So now let's go back to our container and let's just restart this Directus demo main container. And now, clicking on the log files, this problem should not be there anymore. Let's just watch this happening. And as you can see, the shutdown and restart mechanism worked, and we can now switch over to Directus itself, because obviously it's running properly. In the next section, we're going to have a look at Directus, log on, and make ourselves at home in this thing. Now let's have a look at our newly created Directus installation. I hope you remember the IP address. Otherwise, if you don't, just go back to your script, and here at the bottom you have the IP address of your Directus container. So let's enter this here, http://192.168.200.13:8055. Don't know why they chose 8055, but this is just one of these things. Now we have the login screen, and of course, how do we log in? With our admin email and admin password. So this is admin@example.com, and the password was the German word geheim, which means secret. Geheim. Sign in. And here we are. No, we don't want to save this password. This is just nasty. And this is basically our own Directus installation. We currently don't have any content. We could create something which they call a collection, but basically a collection is a table in normal database speak. But let's just stay here and click on these items here on the left-hand side. We have the user directory. Of course, we don't have any users yet except for ourselves. We can create more users later on. We have a file library. So basically we can upload and download and propagate files just the way we like it. Then we have something which is called Insights. That is the place where you can create dashboards. Then we have the link to the Directus documentation. So if you need to split off to the documentation, you click on here and you can get all the links which you might need. Let's close this again. And lastly, we have what's called settings. And this is basically where lots of things are happening. First of all, let's go to the first one. They want to branch us off into the data model immediately, where we can create our collections, but let's postpone this for a few minutes. Let's first have a look at the project settings. Here we can customize quite a few things, which is quite interesting. Like, for example, you can give this a name, Directus demo. Project descriptor, this is demo for YouTube. Then we can give it a URL, which means it is possible to make this accessible from the outside world, from the internet, directly onto Directus. It is beyond the scope of this video now, but it is possible. Then you can select a default language. Of course, English United States is a default for now, but you have a plethora of other languages available, which doesn't necessarily mean that the user interface of Directus is translated into all these languages, but you can basically fine-tune the application which you are creating and use translations into other languages here. You will later on see where it is used. Then you can give it your own style. You can give this your project a particular color, which gives a certain accents to it. Let's just use this blue here. And you can upload a logo if you like. You can give public areas a different foreground and background color. Quite interesting. You can give it a public node. You can customize certain CSS variables, which is brilliant. And of course, you can customize this menu here on the side. Then, of course, there are certain policies in terms of security, like, for example, password policies, which you can select here. You can even create your own. Then login attempts, 25 is generous, but we are working in a development environment here. So in a production environment, you might not have 25 attempts. Then, of course, you can have parameters for files and storage. If you want to upload pictures, for example, you can give it certain instructions what to do with these files. Now let's go one step further. Let's have a look at the roles and permissions. Yeah, they want us to save these things. If you change something, there is a certain icon up here in the corner. Let's save this, and you can see I changed the color of our project to blue from this purple, but the rest is still the same. To change these things, you would have to dive into the CSS level. Okay, let's go over to the roles and permissions. This controls basically on a table or collections level, they call it collections, who can do what with the data. So you can create, for example, a new role. Let's call it test. And you can say, okay, app access is enabled, so people can access what's, I'm just clicking on this, what's behind this, this cube. You can include certain collections here and give the very finely grained permissions. If you want to enable admin access, so basically this role can almost do everything with the application, you can also enable admin access if you like. Then you can say, okay, these members of this role can only access this app from a certain IP environment, also possible. You can also say, okay, everybody in this role has to log on with two-factor authentication, and so on and so on. Then lastly, of course, you can add existing users to this role, or even you can create new users from here, which is pretty cool. Then we have things like presets and bookmarks. This is a topic which we can't use right now. We're going to use this once we have a few collections in our system. Then we have custom translations. As I said, we have lots of languages in our project settings, and now we can even create certain keys and values for languages which can be used later on. Then webhooks, which is something where you can basically, once something happens, you can trigger something in a different application across the internet. For example, you can send notifications, or you can trigger workflows in, let's say, N8N or other workflow engines. Absolutely cool. Then lastly, we have something which is called flows. This is basically a workflow engine inside Directus. I won't touch it in this video, but yeah, there is lots of documentation about it. It has been newly integrated in Directus in version 10, and there is still lots of development going on, and this is going to be really cool. Other than that, there are two more links which are Directus development based. You can report bugs or request features, which basically links you back into GitHub. Now let's have a little look at what we can do with our collections, respectively the data model. Yeah, let's go over here, click on data model, and what's in database speak a table is a collection in Directus. So I'm going to make a very simple example, countries and cities, so that you can see how these also can connect to each other. I'm going to create a collection, and it already says create a unique table name. I'm going to say countries. We leave it as it is here. Let's not make things more complicated than they should be. And now let's click on next. Now we have the option to create a few standard fields. I usually turn them all on because it's easier to later delete them than to recreate them. They are mostly targeted to, as we know, CMS related tables, but hey, who cares? Well, a country doesn't need a status, but maybe a sort field created on is always good to know, and always good to know who created this thing, when it was last updated, and who did the update. Always a good thing to have in terms of, well, compliance. So now let's click on Finish Setup, and now we have our fragment for countries. To make it really a countries table, let's create a field, and this should be a normal input field. Normal text, and usually a country has a name. Let's call it name. And now we can select from different types, but string seems to be correct for a name. If you want, we can give it a default value, but this is not really necessary. But a name is absolutely required, otherwise we can't have a country. Now, in the user interface, we can give it a placeholder, enter country name, name. You will see later on what it is. And now, left and right from it, we can actually set icons. But let's for now just save this story here. Save. That's already very good. Now, let's scroll further down and have a look at the collection setup. The collection is called countries. We can give it a note, if you like, to see what it is, what it does, whatever. You can enter anything. We can give it a certain icon, and here you have lots of icons available. And you can try to select via searching from this list, but let's just do this. This is going to be our icon for the countries collection. We can give it a certain color if we like that. Let's click on this and make it green, always. Now we have a display template. If you have more fields than what we have here, you can create a certain setup of what is displayed if we just look at the countries collection in a list view. Let's just leave this open for now. We can go further and give it a collection name in a different language. So for example, we can create new in the language like German. And now let's call it Länder. Singular unit is Land, plural unit is Länder. Ein Land, zwei Länder. Here we go. Now we have a preview URL, basically also similar to the display template is what we can see in overview views. We can also select how things are archived. This is beyond the scope of this video, or how it is sorted. Now we can select a sort field, but I think the sort field itself is the right one for now. Okay, let's now save this beautiful piece of work and switch over to our content page. And now we have the countries collection here. Of course, nobody's home. Let's now create an item and now enter something like Italy plus Germany and of course United States. So here we go. And now we have a few countries to work with. Let's take this one step further and add another collection. Let's call that one cities. To now create a new collection, we can click on this plus sign. Let's call it cities. Let's enable most of these fields again because we don't need a status. Create a field. Name, of course. Type can be string, default, no. Placeholder, please enter the city name. No icons necessary, click on save. Or we can go one step further and we can continue in advanced field creation mode. Now, all of a sudden we can enter much more data. Like for example, we can give this field a maximum length, 255 characters. Should be a very long city name to go over that. Default value again, no. Allow null value, not a good idea. And if you want city names to be unique, maybe not in this case, because for example, there is definitely Heidelberg in Germany, Heidelberg in South Africa, and Heidelberg in the United States. So unique is not a good idea here. Let's have a look at what we can enter under field. We can make it read-only, we make it required. Klingt good. Sounds good. Klingt gut. We can hide it under detail. We can translate the field name. For example, if we have, again, the situation that we want to look at in a different language. Like, for example, in German. So the field name for name is Name. Okay, sorry, it's a little bit trivial, but I just wanted to show off. Now let's go over to interface. As I said, we have already the placeholder. We can add icons. We can give it a soft limit. We can change the font if we like. We can trim, start and end if there is anything like spaces also. Sometimes a good idea. And we can also slugify, but what that means is just beyond the scope. Now we can go to the display part, and here we can change how the value is displayed. Takes us a little bit far away from what I actually wanted to demonstrate, so let's leave it as at this point so that you know it is there and that you can work with it. Then we can validate, of course, according to certain rules. And there are certain conditions which you can also fulfill, but let's leave it as it is. Let's save it. Now we have our city name. Now let's take this one step further because, as I mentioned earlier, a city belongs to a country. Now let's create the appropriate field here. Now I clicked on create field and let's scroll a bit further down, and now you see the relational section, and we create something which is called a many-to-one. One country can have many cities. Let's click on that. Give it a name like country. Now we have to select the related collection, which is countries, of course. Display template, we only want to see the name of the country. And now we have the option to create items from the interface of cities. This is good. So basically, if we have a city for which we don't have a country yet, we can create that later on. Or exactly, we can create a new country right now. We can select it, and there are also filter rules, but let's save this right now, right here. So we have our country thingy. Let's have a look at this now in our content section. Let's go over to the cities and let's create an item. Let's create, as I said, Heidelberg. And we have to select a country for that, which will be Germany. We can't select two countries, we can only select one. Okay, let's save this. Okay, This is a little bit ugly that we see instead of the country name the number 2, but let's take care of this later on. Let's create a few more cities like New York, and this will be in the United States. Save. And one more just for Rome, for completeness sake, which is in Italy, of course. So now we have all these things available. Now you saw earlier that we could also create a city or a country if we are in the city editor. Like, let's create something new, like Munich. No, Munich is in Germany. Let's say London. Let's click here. No, we don't have any Londons here. But we can click on this plus and go straight over into the countries editor and say UK. Of course, I could have done it nicer, United Kingdom and so on and so on. But you see, there is a new country here. Okay. First of all, let's change the sequence. First the city name and then the country. Sounds good for me. Now let's go back to our editor and say, hey, cities, that's nice, but we want to see something else. And to edit our country column, we can click on these 3 points, say edit field, and now we can go over to display. And now we say related values, and now we get this new option of display template, and we say name. Say yes, and now let's go back. And as you can see, the country name is displayed properly. Now it would be really nice if we could have a list of countries, of cities, if we have a look at a country. So, but for now it's a little bit barren. Let's go back here. Let's go to countries and let's create a field. Now, this is the other way around. We have one to many. So basically we have one country, many cities. And the collection is cities. The foreign key will be country, because both are related via the country key. And let's just save the story here. Have a look over here. And we have a list of 3. Now, instead of these things in brackets, it would be nice if we had the option to see the city names. Let's go back to cities and create one more so that you can see what I actually mean. Let's go to here. Let's say Milan, which is also in Italy, of course. Okay. Okay. Let's go back to countries. Now you see 3,5. Of course, as before, the sequence is not really what I like. So I just drag the sequence of these fields in this window with a mouse. So it would be nice if there would be now Milan or Rome, Milan. Let's go over here to the countries again. Cities. Let's go to edit field, display, related values, display template, name. Save. Let's go back to here. And now at least we have something which is called 2 items. We can click on it and we have a little list saying, in this case, Rome and Milan. Here we can see London and so on and so on. As you can see, this Directus thing gives us lots of options to display our data, to interact with the data, and so on and so on. Let's have one more look at the at our security part, roles and permissions. And now let's have a look at our test role which we created earlier. And as you can see, we have our two newly created tables here. And now I can give defined permissions to this role, what can be done with these different tables. For example, I can say the test role can display cities and countries, but they are not allowed to add, to edit, or to delete them. They're also not allowed to share the links for it, which is pretty astounding actually, how finely grained we can design our access mode. Also, we had a look at our presets and bookmarks, and as you can see, this is a little bit, it doesn't say anything, but if we add one field, collection, we all of a sudden see for which collection these presets are. And for example, we're working with the sequence of these fields in the view for cities and countries. I can say, wait a second, this preset is not for the admin user, it is for all users. So everybody and their uncle will of course have this this layout. So basically I can go as user admin or Jürgen and create my own layout, but I can also make this layout the default layout for everybody else. Also very cool. And we didn't write one single line of code yet. And if you wanted to do that, you could still do this. But this is how far we got with just a few mouse clicks. This brings me to the end of this video about Directus. We just scratched the surface of everything, but you learned how to install it and how to do your first steps on this system. If this video was helpful or at least entertaining, it would be awesome if you could leave me a like. As I said, this does not only help this video, but the entire channel. As mentioned at the beginning of this video, there are also options how you can support this channel, and that's via Patreon memberships. There are 3 membership levels, and all my Patreon members can watch my videos completely free of ads, and I am answering all your questions and comments on Patreon with priority. There are also 2 further membership levels, Plus and Plus Plus. They give you 10, respectively 25% discount on my consulting rates, and if you would like to book a session with me, there is the booking link down in the video description. Of course, there is the completely free of charge YouTube subscription, and if you haven't done so yet, please take your time to click on subscribe right now, and please also ring the bell, because then you will be notified each time I release a new video. For this time, thank you very much for watching, and see you soon.